increasingly unstable and unhinged.
Anyone who has openly said, as he has, that he would terminate the Constitution of the United States.
Liar.
Someone who suggests we should terminate the Constitution of the United States.
Liar.
Should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. Never again. Never again. Never again. Never again. Donald Trump is increasingly unstable and unhinged.
I genuinely apologize to start a show off with your ears bleeding from the shrill, nasally voice that will echo through the ages, that being that of Kamala Harris. When was it? It was this morning or last night? I think it was this morning, because that's what I spent the better time of my morning routine doing, was editing this together. I see a clip of Kamala Harris, and just so everybody appreciates which one it was, it's the one on the bottom left. Look at her flicking of the hair, and she's shrieking like a psychotic banshee again. And I'm thinking, it's like, no, it's like I'm going crazy, or I'm hallucinating, that I thought she was wearing a black top when she did that and standing in front of the American flags, multiple of them, not this one. So I'm thinking, like, okay, maybe I missaw, and this is a zoomed in from a telephoto lens, and so you only get one American flag behind her. The amount of times this crazy cackling idiot has said this same line. I saw another montage, they had 9 of them, and they like synced it up better than I did. It's like, she's crazy. Like, this is crazy. Look at how manufactured, how inorganic, how inauthentic, how rehearsed this is. Look at her hand. Never again. Look at it in all of them, except the top left, which you don't see.
We should terminate the Constitution of the United States.
I need more
Should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. Never again. Never again. Never again.
Like, it's ugly, and not because of what Kamala looks like. It's ugly. It's ugly for the eyes. It's ugly for the ears, and it's ugly for the soul. Oh, people, good evening. Desperation. I'm having a bit of a back and forth with someone on Twitter, and who I have got nothing against her. She was on the show, and she says, no, it's rehearsed. There's nothing wrong with that. It's preparation. And I'm sitting there saying, no, there's a difference between preparation and rehearsal. There's a difference between being prepared and rehearsed so that you know the lines. One is based on understanding. The other one is based on memorization. If you understand and you're prepared for the knowledge, you never have to rehearse. My kid right now is the lead in a play, and it's not exactly the same thing. I was like, do you understand the lines? Like, yeah, I understand them, but I don't need to understand them to know that my cue is when I hear the word here. My cue is when I hear the word sink. And I come in. I don't need to understand anything. I just need to rehearse the lines and memorize them. When you understand something, you don't need to rehearse for shiat, because you have the knowledge baked in and you can answer off the cuff. And the fact that Kamala Harris can't answer a question off the cuff and needs to be rehearsed means that she is a vapid, ignorant buffoon of the highest order. But don't take my word for it. Listen to Kamala. Oh, but rehearsed. When I say rehearsed, fake, phony, a big fat phony, to quote from the Family Guy. I see this because I'm going through all of the clips this morning, trying to put that montage together, and I see things, and I see them in a different way now. This is from the Michigan, the Grand Rapids, Michigan one, the one where she never again, never. Oh my God, makes your eardrums want to explode. And I see this, and I see it in a different light this time. Watch this. Fake, phony, staged. Thy name be Kamala Harris.
He's going to threaten the health insurance of 45. We need a medic over here. We need a medic over here.
Watch that again. Do you know what the chances of that actually being authentic, organic, and spontaneous are? 0.00479. Let me impress you guys with my ability to memorize numbers. The chances of that being organic and authentic, 3.14159265358973323. I believe that's the first 20 numbers of pi. It's fake and phony, and you can see it. She was just waiting for the moment of that speech to deliver it, much like her never again.
He's going to threaten the health insurance of 45. We need a medic over here. We need a medic over here.
I'm in control. She's in control, people.
Let's clear a path.
Clear a path.
So they can come through, please.
Clear path. Oh, is it over? That's it? The medical emergency's over like that? Oh, yeah. I'm so cool.
And we got jokes over here.
Oh, yeah. I'm
grounded in
cool under
reality.
pressure. We got jokes. Which accent do I got now?
Okay. We're
Oh, yeah.
okay.
We're good.
Thank you
Oh, that's
all.
it. That's it. Medical emergency's over. Where did she learn it from? Wait until you see Don Trump Jr. at the end. She doesn't just copy from Donald Trump. She copies from Don Trump Jr.
This is purely set up by Democrats, and I think they're trying to get out. Medical.
This is 8 months ago, just so you know.
Okay. Yeah, medical, please. Are they okay?
A big, fat, phony copycat is what she's. Let me get to the Don Trump, because this one is truly impeccable. When she, I tell you, I think she ripped the script from Don Jr.'s speech 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Isn't this?
But what's really scary? Hey guys, hey, we need a medic over there.
That is authentic. There was a little bit of edge in his voice, not panic, controlled. That's authentic. My goodness, I like this guy. Here, hold on. Here, listen to this.
Scary. Hey guys, hey, we need a medic over there. Need a medic?
Make a hole.
Let's deal with that first, guys. Is someone doing that?
Guys, someone on that? Make a hole.
Guys, can we get a medic in there? Make a hole, please.
That is authentic. Want to see big fat phony?
Going to threaten
One more time.
the health insurance of 45.
We need a medic
over here.
Huh?
We need a medic over here.
I'm filled with anger and irritation and rage, and mostly vomit. Like vomit. Okay, I think that's good enough for the intro. Sorry, there was one more. Actually, I wanted to show this meme before we get going here. This is classic. Elon Musk tweeted this out. Can I see your ID? No, sir, I'm voting today. Hilarious and true. It's funny. It's funny and true. There was one more that Kamala Harris did earlier, and I have to show it. I have to show it. I'm sorry. We're going to get into the better stuff, which is going to be the show and fun stuff. And I got a big announcement for Zachary Apotheker, the Border Patrol agent. This one. I don't know if I had it up. I think I had it up in the backdrop. Hold on one second. Last one, and relevant for tonight's show. When they say the quiet part out loud, loudly, proudly, and mostly loudly, you should listen. Remember, they always say to Trump, when someone tells you who they are, you should trust them. He's holding a rally with a bunch of neo-Nazis at Madison Square Gardens. He knows exactly what he's doing. These idiots just called 20,000 New Yorkers Nazi supporters. The one thing I love about Kamala and the Democrats' stupidity, they don't even learn from their own mistakes. That's how you know you're dealing with idiots. They just had their deplorables moment on steroids. Listen to this. Listen to this. This is Kamala. Again, as I'm listening to old speeches that she gave, this a couple weeks old, you hear things. You hear things new for the first time.
Who have all, in one way or another, used the word that he is unfit to be president again and is dangerous. Listen to the report that what his former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a general, said about him, that he is fascist.
Listen, it's coming. Listen to the crowd.
And these are people who were in his administration, who worked closely with him in the Oval Office and the Situation Room. And so I would caution us also, because some people find it humorous what he says.
Listen.
And think it's just silly, but understand how brutally serious. It is. Well, the courts will take care of that. We'll take care of November. Yes. We'll take care of November. But it is brutally serious.
Lock him up. The courts will take care of that. We'll take care of November, whatever that means. She's already announced that they're lawyering up and they'll do what they need to for November. The courts will take care of that. Joe Biden's Department of Justice will take care of locking up Donald Trump, and they'll take care of the November election. Let me just slide this down a little bit. It's irritatingly off center. Sorry I had to do that to you people. I do it because I love you, because I think the world needs to know exactly what is on the ballot. And I'm saying what is on the ballot, not who is on the ballot, because Kamala's not a person. She's a marionette being propped up and jiggled around by the hands of many, many men. Sorry, that was... I didn't script that, but gosh darn it, is that funny. All right, good evening, everybody. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our two sponsors of the evening. One you haven't seen in a while. We're going to get to that one, but we'll start with Be Naked. Talking about being men, people. Be naked. These days, it seems like society wants to turn men into soft, tofu-eating cuddle machines. Testosterone levels are tanking, and the world's pushing this weak, hand-holding agenda. But if you're the kind of guy who'd rather wrestle a bear than sip a soy latte, you need naked organs. I would rather wrestle a bear. My partially torn MCL, however, I'll have to wait a little bit until that heals up before doing it. Be naked. It's not some lab-made potion made from the land of participation trophies. 100% pure bison organs, liver, kidney, heart, the kind of stuff that put hair on your granddaddy's chest, packed with B12, iron, zinc. It's the antidote to low T and all the nonsense out there. Keep your testosterone high and your masculinity unapologetic. Head over to benaked.com. Use promo code VIVA for 15% off. Let's make being a man great again. Head over to benaked.com. Promo code VIVA for 15% off. And hold on one second. Second sponsor, and this will be the last one of the night. One that I've been using, actually, and that I did not know that we needed until moving to Florida. How do I do this? I want to close this here so you can see it. Home title. Okay, let's close this one so you can see it. Home title lock, people. I want to tell you about a crime that's happening in the U.S. called house stealing, also known as title theft, where criminals can transfer your home's title into their name with just a single document and wipe out your equity without you even knowing it. Many of you know that I'm from Florida, where I live in Florida right now, which sadly has become the hotbed for this type of new crime. There's this family in Sarasota. Home Title Lock caught a cyber thief from New York trying to sell their property on a popular real estate website. The thief had fraudulently changed the title, but Home Title Lock quickly detected it and restored it back to the rightful owner. Imagine if they hadn't been subscribed to Home Title Lock. It could have been disastrous. If you're not monitoring your title, these criminals can get away with this, leaving you, the homeowner, to deal with the aftermath in court. It's a real thing. I actually looked into it a fair bit when we came down here because I had no idea. It's not as easy to do this in Canada as it seems to be in the States and Florida in particular. The best way to protect your equity with triple lock protection from our friends at Home Title Lock. Triple lock is 24/7 monitoring, alerts, restoration services. You can get a free 30-day trial and a free title history report when you use promo code VIVA30 at HomeTitleLock.com or use the link in the description. It's in the description there. That is HomeTitleLock.com, promo code VIVA30 for 30 days of protection and a title report for free. And it's one of those situations where when you hear of it happening, an ounce of a pound of cure is worth an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And in some cases, it's worth a whole hell of a lot more than that. So go check it out. And thank you to our two sponsors of the evening. All right. And now, people, an update. You remember I had Zach Apotheker on the channel. Zach is the Border Patrol agent from James O'Keefe's new documentary, The Line in the Sand. By the way, do you hear? Hold on one second. I'm just going to see this. Do you hear this? Wait. Do you guys hear that? If you do hear it and it drives you crazy, let me know. I've given Pudge a bone to chew on. There's no way. Let me know in the chat if you can hear that. Zach Apotheker is the Border Patrol agent in James O'Keefe's new documentary, Line in the Sand. He's the one who, blew the whistle by disclosing to the public the inadequacy of the border protections at the southern border and the real awful human trafficking that's going on. And we can all hear it, but it's fine. Okay, well, I'll take the bone. That is less annoying than her whining at the door, but we'll leave it at that. I'll turn the mic this direction. So Zach was in the documentary, and I had him on the channel. We talked for a long time, and he's a great guy. It's like, the hammer is coming down on you. Are you prepared for what's happening? And I don't think he was, and I don't think he is. And I think this is going to be a matter of him growing his wings as he's jumping off this cliff, because he's jumped off the cliff for a righteous reason. I don't mean like suicide. It's the old Kurt Vonnegut, I want to say. Life is about jumping off cliffs and growing your wings on the way down. I've never forgot that expression since I heard it. So I said, the check is in the mail. They're going to come for you, and they're going to make it. They're either going to fire you and let you battle out in court, or they're going to try to make your life so bloody miserable that it's going to be a case of constructive dismissal. Oh, yeah, we're going to take away your gun, which they've done. We're going to relieve you of duty, which they've done. We're going to publicly humiliate you, which they've done. But the check is in the mail for Zach. And I set up a Give, Send, Go for him. And I've turned it over to him. I have absolutely nothing more to do with it other than having set it up because some people are reluctant to ask for help, and some people might not know that they might actually need it. So I've set it up, and it's turned over to Zach. From what I understand, the update here, or the last thing that they've done, Slash is paid by $30,000, so that's what I set the target at. And I said, like, we're living in a world now where the government abuses of the citizens, uses the full force of the purse that they have, which are taxpayer dollars, to wage this war against the citizens, the truth tellers, and the people who reveal the corruption and the insidiousness. And then the people who do this are left high and dry fighting on their own. So I've set it up. I might have to take that bone away from the dog. It's actually distracting me. And I made sure that I was the first person to donate to it so that you all know that it's legit and that there's going to be no risk of scammery with it. So here's the link. And if you can't give, because I understand you can't, share it around, because I think Zach is in for a world of reprisals that are coming sooner than later. All right, people, let me see what's going on in the chat here. I think, not Barnes, I think Trump is speaking tonight. Let's see here. We got over on Rumble, the White Trash Panda. I feel guilty reading some of these usernames. Question for Barnes. My friend in Michigan was at January 6th and is now being charged with felony disturbance for swearing at a cop at the Capitol. Where can he get proper legal representation? Funny you should ask. I see Robert Barnes in the backdrop. When he pops in, we'll get an answer to that question. And before he pops in, or until he pops in, I want to highlight one highlight from the Rogan interview yesterday. On Friday. The Rogan interview is amazing. You want to know why they don't want people humanizing Trump? Because they don't want people seeing that Trump is not just a human, but a damn good human at that. Listen to Trump talk about, I think this is the General Milley clip. I put together a vlog today. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I'm on CommieTube as well, but share it on Rumble. Viva Fry.
When I left, they started shooting our soldiers. But more importantly, what they did is they did that whole thing with, leaving. He shouldn't have left. Number one, should have left from Bagram, because Bagram's this massive base. It's got tremendous acreage around it. Tremendous. It's a very big, it was built many years ago. And part of the reason you wouldn't have taken that is because it goes to China. 1 hour from where China makes its nuclear missiles.
China. You
should have never left Bagram. Number one, they should have left from Bagram. They should have left last. They should have got, we have Americans that are still there. They should have taken all their equipment out. Everything, every plane, every screw should have been taken out, every tent. And I said that's when I realized that Milley was a dummy. I said, we're leaving, but I want to get everything out. Sir, it's cheaper to leave it. I said, what do you mean
cheaper to leave it?
Yeah, he said it's cheaper to leave it. That was
cheaper.
Cheaper. He said it's cheaper. Sir.
Not more dangerous.
No, what he meant was it's more profitable to leave it.
He just said cheaper. I said, I want every plane. I want every tank. I want the goggles. They have night goggles. They have all this stuff that these guys now have. He said, sir, it's cheaper to get out and leave it. I said, so you think it's cheaper to leave a $150 million brand new airplane in there than it is to fly it out with a tank of jet fuel and put it in Pakistan or just fly it directly back? It's cheaper to leave. I said, this guy's nuts. I'm telling you, he was so stupid. He was so unwise.
Now, I said that he's not stupid. He's corrupt. And people rightly pointing out in the comment section, that's probably Donald Trump's way of saying it. That this guy is a corrupt, seditious, treasonous dog who thought it was not cheaper to leave the arms there, but beneficial to let them fall into the hands of the wrong people. That way you ensure that you're at a state of perpetual war. And it's better for the military-industrial complex. Now you got to rebuild, buy some more stuff. Here, take it, leave it. Hey, I left my bike got stolen. I get to get a new bike now. It's good. It's good for business. All right, when Barnes gets in here, we're going to get the show going. But that is it. Oh, Barnes is in. Sir, I love it.
I'm always in the background, just don't know when to come in.
And I love the fact that on the internet is the only place where I'm taller than you. Robert, so first of all, how goes the battle?
Good.
Cigar, book, and I have a question about where Trump is giving a speech tonight, because people have been saying making Hitler connections, and it pisses me off. But what do you got?
Oh, that's a Liga Privada cigar. The book is a newly released book, co-authored by John Grisham and another. real life stories of people who were wrongfully prosecuted, wrongfully convicted, wrongfully imprisoned. And it gives you sort of a sneak peek into how that comes about, the corruption within the system that leads to wrongful prosecutions. I mean, some of it, like the first case he details, is just, it's so obviously outrageous. It's kind of mind-boggling that the entire legal system could fail, but it's a warning sign of how often it fails because of the collective logic that they so often borrow. That their failure to have skepticism towards one another within the system invites abuse of the system and the railroading of the innocent. But yeah, excellent book, highly recommend it.
Robert, so Trump is speaking at Madison Square Garden. So now I'm putting you on the spot because I don't know if you know the history to this. My father gave me a bit of the history as to why they're saying that, this is reminiscent of a Hitler rally or a neo-Nazi rally. Apparently, there was a rally by New Yorkers in support of Hitler back in 1939 at the Madison Square Gardens, but context was a little different. Are you familiar with that history?
Well, I mean, you could say that about any forum, right? I mean, there's not a major forum in America that's been around a while that hasn't been used by every single political group known to man, right? It'd be like saying that you can't speak at a certain forum because the Klan once used it. I mean, it's illogical. The Madison Square Garden, one of our most famous venues. So, trying to make the comparison to the 30s is just idiotic. It's designed to scare the Democratic base, but it's not going to matter. And it's not who they need to reach to. So historically, it's an illiterate comparison because you could say that about quite literally almost any venue of any history throughout. I mean, it's not like it's distinctively known for that. It's Madison Square Garden. It's the place you go. It's where the New York Knicks play. New York Islanders play. It's where you get some of the greatest concerts. It's almost designed for maximum. I saw U2 perform there years ago. A wonderful place to watch basketball and hockey, but also a wonderful place to catch a concert. It's just a world famous venue. So the fact that it's been used by every political group known to man, Communist Party has used the Madison Square Garden before. Does that mean if you use the Madison Square Garden, you're now an homage to the communists? I mean, it's just one of the dumbest points you could possibly make.
Like they have gone full hog with the Hitler fascist dictator comparison. Now it's funny.
I mean, they just don't know the script is dead. I mean, whoever's writing the simulation, they must have got them from Disney and Marvel's in Star Wars and Star Trek's most recent writers, because it's not just that they're ideological; it's that they're idiots. They're bad writers. People like the Scottish or maybe he's English. No, I think he's Scott. Critical Drinker, Nerderotic, Geeks and Gamers, that whole cultural crowd. I asked them on Friday Night Tights a couple of weeks back. It's like, do you think the bad writing isn't just because of ideology, but rather these are bad writers who couldn't get a real job, so they use ideology to disguise the fact that they can't write in order to get a job? And I think, it's how Kamala Harris is where she's at. In a real competitive electoral environment, Kamala Harris is never the nominee for president of the United States of any major party.
Well, I got to tell you, your prediction, or at least your analysis of why it wasn't or shouldn't be her, because despite what everyone thinks, Biden was a more popular candidate. I mean, it's played out impeccably in real time for anybody who's been watching the channel long enough.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So but the idea you'd go back to the 2016 script, and it was, that had some plausibility when nobody knew Trump. When Trump as a White House person was uncertain. 8 years later, people's view of Trump is baked in the cake. And all it's done is got better in the last 4 years. And so it will have zero effectiveness. Zero. It's almost, to be frank, it's the worst possible line of attack they could bring. Is to reinvigorate all the stereotyping and caricaturing that has got to the point. They've cried wolf so many times that now when people hear them cry wolf, they get annoyed by it.
Yep.
And so it shows you that you have a despairing campaign, a despairing party run by incompetent people. And it's like the clip you were showing of Trump talking about Milley. This is the number of idiots we have in positions of power. And we just got to purge the idiots to start with. Not just the ideologues, but the idiots. And they're all over the place.
No, my concern is that they do it. I don't think they expect to sway anybody, but they might, get some unhinged lunatic like a Ruth 2.0 who thinks now like I've got to go do something, do what you think you need to do to an actual bona fide Hitler.
Yeah. Madison Square Garden's a real secure, safe place. I mean, that would be a tricky thing to try to pull off. So and would that solve their problem? I mean, that would intensify and amplify their problem. So I mean, at this point that ship has sailed, and none of those options are viable options. That's why all the big tech guys are on the phone to Trump saying, "Hey, I never really disliked you. I was always a fan, really." That's why Bezos is telling the Washington Post, "We're not endorsing nobody. I'm not going to be on the receiving end of those contract denials."
Chris Pavlovski's take on this was that Bezos and Washington Post, they make their money from AWS hosting, and so they don't want to burn any of the bridges that.
In general, that
they see the writing
to get some political cover. And so he doesn't want to be exposed. Same with the LA Times owner. He doesn't want to be exposed. So the smart people already know this game is up, and it's only Democrats sort of being desperate. But this always happens in the last week. In the last week, everybody accuses everybody else. I mean, Joe Biden went around and said if Mitt Romney's elected president, black people will be put back into chains. I mean, you always get insane rhetoric at this point, but it shows the political ineptitude, that your closing argument is this weak, that it's an 8-year-old script that's like a bad rerun. So I say it's like bad Hollywood. It's the same kind of people who have completely eviscerated the quality of Hollywood writing for about the better part of a decade, particularly with great brands that had inherited value. These are the people who run campaigns for the Democratic Party. And that's why they come up with lame scripts, lame narratives, lame storyline. I mean, they are even running an ad saying, you can't vote Trump because then you'll lose your right to porn. I mean,
I was going to start with that.
Of what's going to resonate. This is like imagine like a 23-year-old young woman who lives in Brooklyn, who's never worked a real job, who's never lived in the real world, who, has inhabited safe spaces from the time she was 5, who thinks that The View is an independent view of American politics, who thinks Rachel Maddow is an honest paragon of truth and value.
I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's almost too obscene to even play. I'm going to turn the volume off.
It's ridiculous.
Look at this. I thought this was a gag. This is
like a Babylon Bee parody.
And then it's apparently what they think is that Republicans want to be in your room while you jack off.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's also you're trying to make that look like Trump, right? The Republican Party is too preachy. That works if your candidate is Romney or your candidate is Pence. Somebody like that. It doesn't work when the candidate's Trump.
It's wild. What I was going to ask you is 2 things. Okay, so there's been no update in the sentencing. The sentencing, if it should occur in the New York case, is after the election, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. There has been no update in the New York Court of Appeals case, where they had what I think was some vigorous cross-examination by the judges. No judgment issued there, and we suspect that'll occur also after the election. I guess, well, we'll go over the menu in a second. We'll just get one off the top here. Trump filed, what is it? Is it a notice of motion in the DC court asking for basically the dismissal of the case because Jack Smith unlawfully appointed, and what do they call it? Appropriations funds that he is being used to prosecute this lawfare persecution, upwards of $20 million, is also unlawful because in as much as he was never lawfully appointed, he could never be lawfully procured funds from the purse of the Congress. What is the issue with like a notice of motion versus just making the motion?
That's just a protocol, a procedural protocol, depending on the court. In some courts, you have to file a notice before, and you have to schedule the hearing date before you can actually file the motion. It varies by court, so that's just a procedural mechanism. It doesn't have any substantive consequences.
The motion itself, we don't anticipate that corrupt commie Judge Chutkan is going to grant it. But meanwhile, what is going on that they are releasing portions of memorandi or memorandums? That's not what it is. Memorandi that Jack Smith is filing in this court. Am I understanding it correctly that the controversy here is that this case is supposed to be suspended pending an adjudication on the immunity argument, and that Jack Smith is still filing stuff and disclosing stuff to the public when Trump himself is unable to respond to it?
I mean, effectively, mostly this is grand jury records and information. And the judge said that if she didn't allow the public disclosure of it, she would somehow be weighing in on the election. When obviously by allowing the public disclosure of it during the election, you're trying to influence the election. It just exposes sort of how political she is, but it will have zero impact on the election. So it's mostly a waste of time that will just further remind everybody how political the legal system has become as it concerns people like Trump.
And one last one, Robert. Let me pull it up. I put out a vlog yesterday, and I'm convinced that I'm in a portion of the, I don't care about CommonTube, but in the portion of the algorithm where I need to break through whatever suppression that they are putting on the channel. And I put out this video breaking down the McDonald's scandal of this picture that purportedly showed Kamala Harris in a McDonald's uniform. And I go full sleuth because I was suspicious that it didn't seemingly come from the Kamala Harris campaign. And then I go back and look, and it looks like the model of the uniforms from the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. And it turns out that whoever created this image pulled a photograph from an obituary of a Canadian woman who died in, I want to say 2007 from cancer, and they superimposed her face. Ironically enough, it was a white woman from Canada. And I guess a lot of the sycophants were so happy they found their evidence that they could now shut MAGA, Republicans up with by saying, here's the evidence that she actually worked there. And it was all a big fat scam. Someone in our locals community, I'm going to remember who it was in a second, rightly and I think astutely pointed out that it was probably a troll, a right-wing troll who did this, put it out on the internet, and then the idiots took the bait. Someone in our community had asked whether or not this could violate copyright, invasion of privacy, taking something off of someone's obituary page. Hypothetically, if this occurs in the States, I mean, is there any, not that there should be, but just for fun's sake, is there any cause of action for whoever was in the photograph, the family of, for someone ripping this off the internet?
I wouldn't think so, no. I mean, this is somebody else's image, and it's used for meme and parody satire purposes, which is an exception to copyright law in the first place.
All right, what do we got on the menu, Robert?
The next week, we'll have a special election edition. People had been requesting that we do an analysis of some of the referendums and initiatives on state ballots and give some explanation from a legal perspective of what they mean, because there's debate in some places. Does it mean this? Does it mean that? So we'll take some of the top most contested and disputed state ballot issues, and we'll go through them next Sunday, right before Election Day, so people have a chance to have at least a better understanding of what these issues are, what the implications are, what the ramifications are. Sometimes these are deliberately written in a deceptive way. Sometimes there's conflicting ones. I think it's Nebraska.
You mean the referendums of the issues that are on the ballot on Tuesday, like vote Article 4? God, I thought you were talking about the Quebec referendum.
Oh, there's ones in Florida. There's ones in Nebraska. There's ones in Arizona. There's ones in Nevada. There's ones in California.
Good. You know what's funny? I was talking about the one in Florida with my kid, my oldest daughter, like in terms of the marijuana one and the abortion one, where Robert, I went and read them, and I still don't understand what the hell they're asking for on them. Exactly. So we read them. It's like, well, would you want to vote yes or no? I was like, I don't know, honey. I have to go.
And that's what a lot of other people are doing. So I figured we would next Sunday. We'll take apart some of the more big ones, do a deeper dive into them to give some legal analysis of what the actual impact or ramification is, since it's not always apparent. Open primaries is on the ballot in some places. It's sold as one thing. It may be interpreted as another. So all of those things get a chance to break down so that people can. We'll probably go through like 15 of them, some of the more prominent big ones in the bigger states. But that'll be next Sunday, right before Election Day. Tonight, we got election cases galore. We got voter rolls. We got overseas voters. We got late ballots. We got drop boxes. We got James O'Keefe undercover in Arizona, all triggering legal or political controversy this past week. We've got the Elon Musk having to fight it out with the Biden administration and the National Labor Relations Board over a tweet. We got a big win for victims of vaccine mandate discrimination coming from a surprising place. Arbitration and court injunctions, if you want to see how creative courts can be when they want to, and prevent other courts from competing with them, prevent arbitration when they're the ones that were the people driving arbitration. We have a case out of the Second Circuit exposing how inconsistent and hypocritical the courts can be on issues of arbitration, court injunctions. A big Second Amendment case out of the Second Circuit. Unfortunately, it follows up what some of us previewed and predicted after the Supreme Court sort of walked back parts of Bruin. And now that's what's happening down as that flows down and across the cascading across other courts. They're starting to strip away your Second Amendment freedoms all over again. So we'll get to that. Coach Gruden got a win over the NFL. We discussed that case previously, but the Nevada Supreme Court decided to reevaluate, and a big win for Coach Gruden. And last but not least, bankruptcy and retirement. People often, people are asking about Rudy Giuliani and all the insane execution of judgment in that ludicrous Alex Jones style case that was brought against him. One of the places you can protect yourself is knowing what's exempt under the bankruptcy laws and your state homestead laws. And often that gets litigated, what constitutes a retirement exempt from bankruptcy laws, et cetera. If Rudy Giuliani had a better asset plan before he went into that case, he might not be facing what he's dealing with now. But we'll recap some cases on that as well.
Okay, and let me just get through some of these just we don't let them pile up. Viva, have you heard that Quebec's public health guru during the pandemic has had his license to practice suspended? No, I didn't. And I'm certainly going to, I hope you're talking about Horacio Arruda. We got another one here from NetJess, who says, Viva, trying to reach out with content ideas, DM, screen grab, and I will email you. Because if I give my email out, it's going to just turn into, get too much. The rally was held by the German-American Bund, says the engaged few. Yeah, and apparently it was also, first of all, it was before America had entered the war formally, from what I understand.
Yeah, and before Madison Square Garden itself actually existed in its current form. But they were a pro-Nazi group. There was a group that were.
Ithaca 37 Cato says, did early voting in Maryland? This isn't scientific, but I saw only one Harris wall sign while driving through the voting center. I did see one Trump Vance too, which I found surprising since this area is very blue. I'll tell you some interesting anecdotes if we're getting into that. If you want to know why the leftists make such lousy screenwriters, you should read an essay called, quote, What Shall We Ask of Writers by Albert Maltz. He was one of the Hollywood 10, and the essay cost him dearly. Well, let me go ahead and screen grab that. And the last one, Pinochet, the last one for now. Pinochet helicopter 2 is in the house. The grab by the pussy got married to a beautiful model, wants to take away porn. Yeah, right. Okay. Agreed. Okay, we'll get to the rest afterwards. All right, so what do we start with? You pick it.
Oh, the number one topic for the board, unsurprisingly, were all the election cases. Well, so we can start anywhere there.
Let's start with one of the ones that I'm more familiar with that I still don't freaking understand, coming out of Virginia, where a federal court comes in and enjoins as in prohibits the removal of non-citizens. There's 1,600 of them, so I don't know what major impact it would have. Enjoins the removal of non-citizens from the voter roll that have been expunged over the last several weeks and months. The judge said, and to steelman it, because from what I understand, apparently they found, let's just say a few dozen people who were expunged whose citizenship status is unclear, which I also don't for the life of me understand. How are they not, first of all, how are they not able to know who is a citizen and who is not? And how in the name of sweet holy hell does a federal judge come in and say you're not expunging from the voter rolls non-citizens who are bona fide non-citizens?
The key is there's a procedure in place under federal law to preclude states within 90 days of an election from doing any systematic purge of voter rolls. So if you're going to remove people from the voter rolls within the 90-day time frame, it's supposed to be an individualized analysis consistent with state law. And so the part of the voter roll purge that took place outside the 90-day window is not being contested, challenged, or reversed. Only the one that is within the 90-day window, which is far fewer voters.
Okay, which means that they don't have enough time because it's within 90 days if it was done erroneously, to retract.
That's the concern. They're allowed to do any individualized review. So it's just no systematic. This is designed to deal with people who flag something and just remove everybody without doing any deep dive into the individual that's on the voter rolls. It's to avoid those issues popping up right on the eve of the election. The nature that the decision is not nearly as impactful as Youngkin and others made it out to be, and that this was just smart politics by Youngkin and conservatives and Republicans. They and Biden took the bait. That the goal was, let's purge some names that we're pretty confident are not citizens, and do it in such a way that we get the Biden administration to sue us, so that it becomes front page news across
that they're suing to keep non-citizens on the voter rolls. And if I understand correctly now, is it 1,600 within the 90 days, which is obviously not going to be determinative on the election?
Well, in fact, you dig into the court's order, and the court's order says you can still remove anybody that's not qualified. You just need to make sure it's an individualized review, not a systematic review. Mm-hmm. That's literally it. So the nature of the decision is not that big at all. It was just brilliant politics played by the Virginia governor and Republicans to highlight an issue that makes the Biden administration look bad. Similar, just like the voter ID. I mean, like a popular meme that's going around now is you get pulled over by the cops and just remind them, no, officer, this is election day. I don't have to have ID.
It's so stupid. Okay, so the Virginia one, it's interesting. It's not impactful whatsoever, but the headline going around now, that massive
great
victory.
Politics by the Republicans. Now, one case that is impactful, going to your question, is the one brought by Texas Attorney General Paxton against the Biden administration. That here's how the rules work for citizenship. Federal law prohibits states from requiring proof of citizenship to register for federal elections. But at the same time, it makes it illegal for non-citizens to vote. And the way in which it's all enforced is the state has multiple access to all kinds of databases to confirm that someone is a citizen. The other thing they can do is they can request from DHS proof that an individual confirmation that someone is a citizen. And what's happening is DHS is refusing to do that under federal law. So that's where you have more problematic concerns, is when that part of the gatekeeping process breaks down. And so Paxton is sued, asking a federal court, please force them to provide the information that we're requesting that federal law requires they give us to confirm whether or not this group of voters is for sure a citizen. And so that suit will be interesting to watch because it might have ramifications. If the DHS loses that one, they would be forced to disclose it in other jurisdictions as well. So, but that's one area where the legal system is breaking down. As some other people who wrote into us were asking about, the other areas of great risk in the election are mail-in votes. And there's twofold ways to flag those. One is to see whether or not the address of the voter that requested the ballot and returned the ballot, whether that address is a legitimate address. Is in there? You can look at change of address flags. You can look at, is it a post office box? Is it a building where everybody's registered to vote, but it turns out to be a church? Is that legitimate or not? Just having a flag doesn't mean it's an illegitimate vote, but it can it's flagged for further inquiry. And there are a range of these people that asked whether or not there's people out there paying attention to that. The answer is yes, there is. The second area of concern is people returning ballots that they didn't fill out, that that's not really them. Somebody else did it in some manner. There's been criminal cases out of Iowa and Georgia in the last 2 weeks where people were trying to do things in postal offices or otherwise trying to prevent ballots from getting properly either distributed or returned. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, they caught 2,500 people or 2,500 ballots that were fake ballots. How did they catch them? Signature matches, in particular, address checks, in particular, voter registration confirmation checks. Those are the three mechanisms by which you can detect and pick up some aspects of the fraud. So there are cases all across the country. And of course, Trump keeps publicizing that if anybody tries it again and he wins, that there will be great legal consequence to anybody who does so. That's basically a deterrent message, is what he's trying to send. So those cases continue to, and investigations continue to develop. Now, it's different than what James O'Keefe exposed in Arizona.
Well, actually, just before we get there, on the same topic, California, I'm just trying to Google it right now. It's not urban legend. It's not misrepresentation that they actually did pass a law that makes it illegal to ask for ID on election day.
Yeah. Well, at the voter polls, right.
Yeah, but
I mean, the thing is, almost all ballots in California are sent by mail-in anyway. It's like 95%. Almost nobody votes in person in California anymore.
No, but if you go to vote in person and you show up and they do, I mean, what are they? If you voted by mail already, then they have your name scratched off.
Almost most jurisdictions are that way. You just walk in, give them your name, and they give you the ballot.
But then how do they know that you haven't already received one by mail and sent that one? How do they know you're not voting twice?
They don't. They can check it later. Are there two ballots that came back in a certain person's name? Because they do check your name off as having voted in person.
Okay.
That's how you're able to track. That's how you see all these data, early voting trackers. That's how. Once you vote, you go into the database that you voted and how you voted. And so if you show up a second time voting, that triggers a siren, if you will.
But when you show up in person, the ballot doesn't have your name on it. It's not individualized.
No, not all. Just a generic ballot. You show up, they check that you're registered, and then depending on what state, like here in Vegas, it's a more like a machine than a paper ballot, and you mark things on the machine, but then you get to see what it looks like, and they print out a receipt of what your ballot is, so you know what it is before it goes in.
Okay. And now, so that at least quells not some concern, but I guess it would be easy to track that type of double voting, and that would be the only real risk. Or if they somehow had, I don't know, a list of people who didn't mail in a ballot and they can get their names and have illegals or somebody vote in their name.
Part of the Trump election contest from 2020 in Georgia was people we were able to confirm, or Trump's team, I was part of it for a period of time, confirmed voted in multiple states or voted in multiple counties. And what that often is that isn't the person who did it. Somebody did it on their behalf. So that's how you track like change of address forms and things like that. Those are not perfect mechanisms, but one way, if you're going to try to steal an election, you do something with voter registration, either to change their address without them knowing, or they changed their address and you have access to the old address and you request a ballot at that old address, things like that. And then that's how you can find people voting in multiple states, voting in multiple counties within the same state. Somebody else was doing the voting on their behalf. It's very rarely that person is trying to vote over and over again.
All right. And now, so what is going on with Nevada and James O'Keefe? I see that he's offering cameras. Arizona, sorry. What's the scandal?
So he had sent some undercovers in to watch the training of people that were going to work the polls and the election offices in Arizona. And what he found was that they were telling them that they could not enforce the law on a whole bunch of areas, including ballot harvesting. That if somebody came in and they strongly suspected the person was harvesting ballots, they could do nothing about it. They couldn't flag the ballots. They couldn't ask any further questions. They couldn't follow up in any manner whatsoever.
And if I may pause you there, harvesting the ballots meaning what? Now they're coming in with multiple ballots not in their name, and the argument's going to be, well, we're just delivering them for an old person's home down the street.
Even in Arizona, that's against the law, outside of extraordinary circumstance. So that's what ballot harvesting is. You're returning somebody else's ballot.
Okay.
And depending on the state, there's different laws. Some states you can up to a certain number of ballots. In other states, you can't unless you have an affidavit that shows you're a relative and the person's disabled. That was one of the issues that got litigated in Ohio concerning drop boxes recently. So it varies by state what the rules are. But in Arizona, there's specific rules limiting the ability to bring other people's ballots into the election. And what they're being trained by, what James O'Keefe found, is that they're being told you can't do that. And look at the Maricopa County election training quote. We're not any type of law enforcement. We're not any type of law enforcement.
I'm just
what
a
are they
Canadian.
doing then?
No, but I'm a Canadian schnook. So then they're not verifying elections or supervising elections whatsoever. They may as well just leave and go home.
Exactly. That was O'Keefe's. That's the uptake from O'Keefe's point. So all the usual suspects in Arizona came out and attacked O'Keefe. Not only like Stephen Richer and that other Bill Gates, those guys, but also Garrett Archer, who's a former election official turned media guy, who used to be more balanced in his. You could always tell he was a Democratic leaning guy, but he wasn't over the top. Ever since 2020, he's gone over the top. He makes absurd statements. He'll go around accusing everybody else of lying and giving false representation. Anybody who challenges an election is now bad and evil. The election offices are the greatest in the world. I mean, he quit being impartial at all and became overzealous in defending elections, particularly in Arizona, which have just been a disaster. And he's become an apologist for the bureaucratic ineptitude of the Arizona election machinery, who are many of his friends and allies. Now he works at ABC. And so he came after James O'Keefe. And so I responded in kind. And it was like, he accused James O'Keefe of misrepresenting when in fact the underlying quote he's referencing confirms exactly what O'Keefe says. What is they went and talked to people and they said, yes, that the local Arizona officials have interpreted the law to have no enforcement mechanism for a whole bunch of election integrity provisions, including prohibition on ballot harvesting, which to me is absurd.
And this is what Jeremy Duda actually. Let me see who Jeremy is. Dad, husband, Axios, Phoenix. Okay. This is Arizona GOP chair Gina Svoboda tells me the O'Keefe media video of Maricopa County poll worker training is a, quote, total misunderstanding, end quote. She emphasized that Arizona's ballot harvesting ban has no enforcement mechanism and that everything the trainer said is, quote, 100% accurate.
Right. So now, by the way, that's a reminder that the Arizona local Republican Party is a complete waste of space. But because that means there's no misunderstanding there, because that's exactly what O'Keefe reported. And that's exactly what the person's saying. Where's the misunderstanding? How's there any misunderstanding there? The misunderstanding is that the Arizona officials are interpreting state law to be unenforceable when it comes to election integrity issues like ballot harvesting. And my point was that confirms O'Keefe's reporting, and that's deeply problematic. And also it contradicts what people like Garrett Archer, this guy from Axios, others have tried to claim. Like when somebody will highlight a problem with how elections are done in Arizona, they'll say, oh, no, we have a law against that. And then when you point out, but you're not enforcing that law, all of a sudden, well, of course we're not. It's like, what was your point initially? Were you lying initially when you said, don't worry, there's a law? Or are you lying now, Garrett? Which is it? This is covering up and apologizing for election ineptitude, and these are election fraud deniers. They like to go around and call everyone else an election denier. Nobody's ever denied an election. It's people like Garrett Archer are election fraud deniers because this is the same jurisdiction that says they're going to take weeks to count the ballots. Why? Well, they got to follow the law. Unless, of course, it's prohibition on ballot harvesting, then you can't follow the law. I mean, which is it? I mean, the Orwellian double talk from the apologists from the Arizona Election Administration is getting to a level that is just insane. It would be considered parody, even if it was Orwell writing it. It would seem like a satire on Orwell, because clearly it couldn't be this extreme. We can't enforce the law because we must follow the law. He actually said that. Garrett Archer said a version of that. We can't enforce the law because that would be taking the law into our own hands. What are you there to do but enforce the law and follow the law? And one minute you're following the law by not enforcing the law. The next minute you're enforcing the law by delaying elections for weeks.
Well, and not just that, they say in one state, oh, it's going to take a while, a couple of weeks, we won't know. And then in Georgia, well, we can't implement that.
That's Arizona.
Yeah. And then in Georgia, they say we can't.
State that says the law requires us to take all this time says they can't follow the law when it comes to ballot.
That's even more hypocritical. I was just going to compare Arizona to Georgia, where they say we can't train the workers. It's going to cause delays. We can't have them count up the vote. All right. Okay. So this is a problem. Why should people not be panicking, Robert?
Well, I mean, it's highlighting the severe issues in Maricopa County and with the whole system, and how we will need greater, more thorough, more detailed institutional reform. It's the main reason I engaged in this, aside from exposing the hypocrisy of the Arizona election fraud deniers, was to defend the good investigative work being done by James O'Keefe, who's documenting, look at these huge flaws in our system. How is it that there can be a law in the books that says you can't harvest ballots, but if you're the election official who sees it, you're the very person who can't do anything about it? You can't even flag the ballot. I mean, that's a huge problem. And the same people apologizing for this, like Garrett Archer, are saying that he said our elections are so pure in Arizona, so pure, they're like the purest in the world. It's like, this is what you're defending? I mean, it's becoming levels of inanity and insanity to try to apologize for this nonsense. And it proves further substantiation there needs to be radical reform and remedy in terms of how our elections are conducted at a nationwide level. That, Attorney General Paxton has to sue the federal government just to do its job to determine whether illegals are on the rolls. It's
not complicated. It's in person, exceptions aside, 2 pieces of ID, paper ballots, period. That's they do in Canada.
If it can work in Comida, if it can work in France, if it can work in all around the world, it can work in the United States of America.
Well, the irony is the only place now where it's not working is British Columbia, but I think they're using Dominion. I think they're using electronic voting there. So
of course they are.
Robert,
I mean, was it Trump that was going into? It was somebody that was going into all these complicated machines that just go on forever.
Yeah. On Rogan, piece of paper. It's not complicated.
It's easy. Make it simple. Make it basic, like it always used to be. Speaking of trying to pad the rolls, the state of Michigan and other states are trying to pad the rolls with overseas voters. That case also went to court this week.
Okay, hold on. Let me get through these super chats before they disappear. How many months to know the U.S. election says not a banned account? I think we'll know the night of. Touch wood, make it true. Then we got not a banned account. How much anti-Semitism would Trump's election bring? None. I mean, how could it bring? Oh, I see the accusations of Zionism for Trump. Okay, don't worry about that. Thank you. Hold on, bringing it down because these don't pop up in studio. How many Trump votes are being switched to Harris? Fritz Vaughn. It's not the same Madison Square Gardens that the Nazis were using. This one didn't open until 1968. The previous message was The previous one at Madison Square Gardens was 17 blocks up on 8th Avenue. All right, thank you very much. And then we got Flex Honcho. Check out Patrick Bet-David's interview of a voting machine hacker. Very interesting and frightening. Yeah, no, we talked about that when they had their whatever they want to call it, VidCon or VillageCon. In Vegas, they have the hacking event, and they were determining vulnerabilities with 2024 electronic voting that could not be remedied. There was not enough time to remedy these before the election. All right, sorry. Now, back to Michigan. What's going on in Michigan?
So, in a bunch of states, so what happened was, as Democrats got nervous about the results, where they have control of the state election machinery, where they control the secretaries of state, and those people don't have the degree of control some people think. They don't control the counting of the ballots, the reporting, all that's done at the local level. What they do control is what guidelines they give as to who can register to vote, voter rolls, how you're supposed to conduct the election, and advice to the local election officials, etc. So that's where you want to monitor their activities. Well, they went out and they sent out a bunch of stuff to overseas voters saying, hey, you can register right here online to vote in Michigan. And the problem was it was contrary to what the federal law says. Federal law provides for overseas voters to register to vote, quote, where they were qualified to vote in the last place of domicile before leaving the U.S. So it's not this unilateral declaration of where you've decided to suddenly make your domicile a swing state on the eve of the election. That's not federal law. Federal law is you get to register in the state where you established domicile previously. And what they did in Michigan is they said, well, as long as you're related to somebody who's a Michigan registered voter, then, or a Michigan resident, then you too can send in your ballots. They're just desperate for whoever ballots they can get from whatever source they can get. So the suit was filed, and of course, the judge used, latches, standing, all those pretexts to refuse to rule substantively on the merits. and it was the Court of Claims of Michigan, which is a Democratic-leaning court, and it said even if the substance was dealt with, they thought everything was fine anyway, because that's the nature of how elections are truly conducted here. So they're going to get away with padding the rolls with some overseas voters. What I can tell you is these numbers are very small.
How much are they typically? And they're talking in the millions now. And other than, military, what is the substantial, which would lean right, I presume? What is the major demographic of overseas Americans who can vote?
See, the issue is that most overseas voters that are really politically engaged, that are Democratic-leaning voters, are already registered to vote. The ones that are not reliable Democratic voters, as they're probably going to find out the hard way. But even then, you can track voter registration to see how many are actually showing up. So there's people that have hit kind of a panic button and said millions are going to be voting tomorrow. Well, that's not the case. I guess it's good clickbait. You can track the registration rolls. It's going to be like a few thousand in different states that register related to this in new states. The other thing is this: a bunch of people don't want to do this because they don't want to be subject to state's taxation. So, there's a bunch of people that live overseas. By golly, they shift their domicile to a low-tax state. They don't want to suddenly be a Michigan resident, New York, Pennsylvania, frankly, any of these states, other than maybe Nevada. That you could convince them to do. No income tax. Florida, maybe no income tax, Texas, et cetera. But they're not in a rush to do that. So the actual number impacted will be low, but it's another example of how the election laws need to be tightened, because every cycle they're figuring out new scams to try to sneak in a few more ballots that are not legal ballots to begin with.
Well, I'm trying to find the numbers for the Michigan voting in 2020. What was the Michigan went to Biden.
Millions of votes in Michigan.
What was the difference? Well, not that the differential is going to make much of a difference, but
the difference in Michigan was bigger than it was in the other states. It wasn't big, but Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, but particularly Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona were the real tight ones, where you got 20, 30,000 votes deciding the winner between all three combined.
Who I didn't check the markets for this, but you're obviously picking Trump to win Michigan this time around.
Yeah, well, I got all the recommended bets up at sportspicks.locals.com, all the betting markets. Basically for $50, you can get all the picks for the election. It's Senate picks, House picks, state picks, margin of victory picks. You name it. Just go to sportspicks.locals.com. Join, and for you'll more than pay back that very, very modest investment if you do it. That's where I've got all the picks. Now, one state that is trying to impose some more election rules that won in court this week is Ohio.
Okay, hold on one second. Before we get there, let me bring who was it? White Trash Panda said, don't forget my question for Barnes at the beginning of the stream, but I don't remember what it was now. Buffalo Betsy in our local community says, don't forget Jan 6 legal counsel needed question someone asked. I'll go to that in a bit. Buffalo Betsy, I am loving what RFK Jr. said about Trump having no lobbyists in or on his transition team. I just heard that today, and I hope they are really putting that out there. I think that appeals to both sides. So no, I think the RFK coming out with the health issue stuff now, and they're doing the Maha is doing great stuff. Eric 4x4 says, I'm kicking myself. I just spent a week working in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and it wasn't until I got home that I realized I was only a few miles from Amos Miller. Robert, what's going on in Ohio?
So one of the issues that popped up in 2020 are all these drop boxes, famously portrayed as problematic in the documentary film by Dinesh D'Souza, 2000 Mules. And the reason is it interferes with the chain of custody of the ballot. You don't know whether the person, if a person goes into the voting booth, fills out their name, goes in, fills out the ballot, brings it back, they did the ballot. Nobody else did the ballot. By contrast, you have some risk with mail-in voting anyway, but if somebody else is returning the ballot, that risk goes up dramatically, right? That they may have intercepted the ballot, they may have stolen the ballot, they may have done the ballot, filled it out themselves, etc. And these drop boxes that were funded by Zuckerberg in 2020, in substantial part, facilitated untrustworthy ballots because of the interference in the chain of custody of those ballots. So Ohio came in and said, look, we're not going to allow insanity to develop. If you're returning the ballot and you're not the voter, you need to fit the traditional legal definition. That's a certain kind of custodian, disabled circumstances, things like that. not just Joe Schmo, not NGO, whatever, not one of the 2,000 mules. And the Ohio court agreed and said that it's too late in the election to try to unsettle it now, and that it wasn't clear that this contradicted the existing law. The Democrats on the court bitterly dissented. If you want to see how complete garbage standing is, watch Republican judges find no standing in cases where the Democrats are suing, and the same courts. The Democrat judges will object and complain. Then when Republicans sue, it will be the Democratic judges saying there's no standing, no grounds to sue, laches, mootness, ripeness, all the rest. And the Republican judges will complain. It shows how complete garbage the doctrine of standing is. It's not a legally sincere doctrine. It's a made-up fiction. But at least in this point, the consequence of that is that Ohio election law will actually enforce a more higher integrity. And the reason why that impacts the whole country is if we see unusual election results in similar areas demographically, that the only difference between those areas is the election laws governing those areas, then it can highlight potential dubious ballots. That's why you want the standards to be such. You want the best standards in as many places as possible, because then you can contrast jurisdictions where those standards are not present with where they are present to see if any consequence flows from it. It's also a deterrent to fraud because people know that are aware of it. They're like, if we're going to try to get away with stealing ballots, we got to do so in such a way it isn't obvious, given the county across the river in the other state doesn't allow these methods and mechanisms, and that people will flag the difference. So so net effect, good ruling and the policy impact, but bogus legal way to get there.
The question I had, we played the video 2 weeks ago, that old woman who had no idea where she was holding a pen, and someone's telling her, you're going to vote for the first black woman. Like, what is I would ask the stupid question, what's the law? Like, the woman doing it was making sure that the woman had the pen in her hand, even though she was controlling her hand. Is it, unless you're, what's the word, in some form of declared state of invalidity, do you need to be holding the pen? When does it get illegal?
Yeah, I mean, that depends entirely by state, is the short answer.
All right.
Because some states you got strict rules, and some states you got liberal rules, and some states they're enforcing the rules, and some states they're not.
Okay, now, by the way, we stayed for too long on CommyTube, so we're going to bring this over to YouTube. We're going to bring it over to Rumble.
The big case on election law that came down this week, and unlike some of those earlier cases, it is a big white pill for what's coming in the future for elections in America. Big ruling out of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay, now hold on. Before we even get there, and I forget to do this every single time. People, the new merch is up, and I think there might still be time to get it, but you can get it if you don't get it delivered before the election. You could certainly get it and give it to somebody after the election. Friends don't let friends vote Democrat. Bada bing, bada boom, and you can get some fight. Viva Fry for merch, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com, which is where we're not going there yet. We're going to Rumble in the interim. Let me bring this here. And Locals, the link is there. The link is here. Go. We're going to end it on CommyTube, and it's going to end us also on Twitter, which is not a commie platform, but we're going to Rumble and vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
Where we'll be discussing Elon Musk.
Oh, yes. Okay, done now. Boom.